I apologize. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Okay. It's recording now. Yes, it is. So in the same way, Krishna has put his most valuable knowledge in the middle. Now we may say that this is all spoken by Krishna. So how can one part be less valuable and another part be more valuable? How is that possible? How can what Krishna says be less valuable? And so, what is the sense in saying that the middle 6 chapters are the most important chapters of the Gita, the most uh, uh, valuable knowledge? Well, it is true that on the absolute level, everything is perfect. So we should not undermine the other chapters or think that they're less important. They're all transcendental, they're all perfectly perfect and spiritual. This is more about better in the sense of more confidential. It's the more secret, more confidential knowledge. And therefore, it's the most valuable. Just like Srila Prabhupada also gives the example in terms of the rasas in the spiritual world. We say that there's 5 primary rasas: Shanta ras, Dasya ras, Sakhya ras, Madhurya, Vatsalya ras, and Madhurya ras. And each one of these is a relationship with Krishna. Now, it's completely wrong to say that one relationship with Krishna is better than another relationship. It's wrong to say that one devotee is better than another devotee, or more advanced than another devotee, or more closer to Krishna than another devotee. Hanumanji is in the Dasya Ras mood, and we cannot say that he is less of a devotee than Arjuna, who's primarily in Sakhya Ras. So, on the absolute level, everything is the same, everything is spiritual. Just like all the chapters of the Gita, everything is spiritual. But still, Srila Prabhupada says that if we look at it comparatively, then he says Madhurya Ras is more intimate, is quote unquote higher than the other rasas. Higher in the sense more intimate. So within the spiritual world, everything is absolute, but there's still variety. But there's not sort of good and bad and high and low in terms of the material calculation. So these chapters are the most confidential knowledge, you could say. And chapter 9 is in the middle of the 6 chapters. It's there. So it gets chapter 9 many times. The title is the most confidential knowledge. So it kind of gets more and more confidential. And then in chapter 18, for example, Krishna gives his most ultimate final instruction, Sarvad Hanuman Parityaja. So it's not that all the other chapters are not confidential. There's verses there that are also very confidential, very, very kind of like Krishna's ultimate teaching. But for argument's sake, the middle 6 chapters are more focused on bhakti and therefore most valuable. Now in chapter 6, which was the previous chapter, at the end, Krishna was describing the process of yoga, and at the end, he says that the dearest yogi is one who is his devotee. So it's like the perfect segue into these chapters. The last chapter of chapter 6 was what? Who has it memorized? Who can say?
Yoginamapi sarvesham.
Yes, you can recite it.
Yoginamapi sarvesham madgatena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam tame yuktattamo mataha.
Very nice. Yes.
Thank you.
So this is Krishna's ultimate conclusion that among all the yogis, Madbhakta, the best one is my devotee. And as we will see in this chapter also, Krishna does this over and over and over and over and over again in the Gita, where he reminds us repeatedly that the best amongst all is the devotee. The best amongst the yogis are the devotee. The best amongst the jnanis are the devotees. The best amongst the karma yogis are the devotees. The best amongst the jnana yogis, the Ashtanga yoga practice ones are also devotees. And um, anyone who says otherwise is just not carefully reading the Gita. It's unavoidable. If you, I mean, every 4 or 5 verses, Krishna emphasizes bhakti. And then some people, as Prabhupada says, unscrupulous commentators say that no, actually, devotion bhakti is a lower stage, and higher than that is something else. But Krishna makes it clear that his devotee is the most intimately united with him. So I just need to pick up one piece of paper that I forgot to bring. 1 second. So now, regarding this second part that we've started, here are a few of Srila Prabhupada's words. Prabhupada says in a lecture on chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, one should try to understand these chapters not by scholarship or mental speculation, but by hearing them in the association with devotees. Chapters 7 through 12 are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So these middle 6 chapters, Prabhupada is again saying they are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, and we should understand them in the association of devotees. This is why we meet every week. This is why it's a Bhakti Shastri requirement to come to classes, because if we're hearing alone on a recording on YouTube, we are really not hearing in the association of devotees. We are associating through this medium, and we are hearing together in association. And we need to discuss and ask questions. It's through this process that the essence of the Gita is revealed to us. Another quote, the first 6 and the last 6 chapters are like the coverings of the middle 6 chapters. Yes, this is where that sandwich metaphor comes from. The first 6 and the last 6 chapters are like coverings for the middle 6 chapters, which are especially protected by the Lord. If one is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita, especially these middle chapters, in the association of devotees, again, Prabhupada emphasizes this, in the association of devotees, then his life at once becomes glorified beyond all penances, sacrifices, charities, speculations, etc. For one can achieve all the results of these activities simply by Krishna consciousness. Once again, if one is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita, especially these middle 6 chapters, in the association of devotees, then his life at once becomes glorified beyond all penances, sacrifices, charities, etc. So the rewards also of understanding these middle 6 chapters is very great. Our life will become glorified. We will gain the results of all the sacrifices, penances, and austerities that we could possibly perform. Now, in the 7th chapter, starting this chapter, Krishna explains how one can become such a Krishna conscious person. In the beginning, one gets the association of devotees, which leads to understanding one's constitutional position as servant of Krishna. By engaging in devotional service, one gains determination, faith, dridhavrata, and becomes convinced that simply by such service, all his objectives will be fulfilled. So, one theme of this chapter in Prabhupada's purports especially is association of devotees. And because of my because of my you could say dissertation, the writing, I had to, for an extended period of time, study the Bhagavatam from just a, you could say, academic perspective, kind of, just like reading it like, um, for, not with starting with any you could say preconceived notion. It was part of the assignment, so to say. And one thing in the course of doing that came through is that if there's one message that the Bhagavatam says over and over and over and over and again, if one were to say that in all the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what would be the most repeated, just you could say strictly in terms of numbers, uh, numerically, most repeated message in the Bhagavatam, it is the association with devotees and service to advanced devotees of the Lord. It's so amazing. It's a theme of every story, every chapter. Prabhupada repeats it over and over again in the purports. And then we come to realize how important it is. So we will read those sections where Prabhupada emphasizes that. And by that association, we get Dhridavrata, the determination to engage in the service of the Lord. And that determination is that all my objectives in spiritual life will be fulfilled by this association, by this service to the Lord. And we must remember that if this is the most repeated message in the Bhagavatam, and we find also in the Gita, the association of devotees, then how valuable these devotees are for our spiritual life. And our own personal experience will tell us, at least mine does, that without the devotees, whatever they may be, whatever you could say problems or shortcomings or lackings they may have, without the devotees, we have no spiritual life. It's impossible to be successful in spiritual life. So regardless of their level of advancement or situation, we have no other recourse in this world than to take shelter of the devotees. Because we need their association, we need their company. So therefore, we have to realize how valuable it is for us. Just like a nice way to understand it is just like a little toddler who has no way of surviving without his mother and father, a parent at least. Just like a small toddler, they may have the most imperfect parents, but without the association of their parents, they cannot live. So their parents are everything for them. We experience that the parent may chastise the child, but the child will still come running back to the mother. So our situation in Krishna consciousness is exactly the same, where we have so much turmoil sometimes, but we have no other place to run back to, because without these devotees, what will we do? There's no way to find our way out of this mirage of ignorance, of this great, you could say, this great well of ignorance. So therefore, we should take this association very seriously, and not, as they say, familiarity breeds contempt. Not take it to be ordinary. It's our greatest benediction. It's our greatest lifeline in this life. So Krishna begins this chapter by telling how rare it is for anyone to know this knowledge. So this is not just Prabhupada's reading. This is not just the acharyas saying that this is the most important. Krishna also starts taking this stone. And very famous verse of the Gita. This actually might even be a memorization verse for you. It's something that makes us understand why devotees are so valuable. Why this is one of the main themes of this chapter. Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvataha Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye, yatatam api siddhanam, kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So Krishna is saying, Manushyanam sahasreshu, out of many thousands among men, one only endeavors for perfection. Only one comes to the temple. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So how rare is someone who is endeavoring for spiritual life? How rare it is to find that association. Krishna is telling the value of a devotee. It's just like they say, right, that among thousands of pearls, only one pearl is a real pearl. Or um, so many examples like that. When something is very rare, it immediately becomes very valuable. So part of the reason devotees are so valuable is because they're very rare in this world. And we are fortunate to congregate amongst devotees. But the whole congregation of devotees, percentage wise, what is it of the percentage of this world? Um, so we may be with 1,000 devotees, but what percentage is 1,000 in 8 billion or 9 billion people? So amongst 1,000 devotees, it's easy to forget that it's very rare. And Krishna is reminding us. And even amongst those devotees, hardly one devotee knows Krishna in truth. So we are all endeavoring. So we all come in this category of Manushyanam Sahasreshu. The fact that we've joined this call, the fact that we chant Krishna's names, puts us in this category. But of this category, only one knows me in truth. There's only one, Krishna is saying. So hardly one. You're lucky if there's one. So, therefore, we oftentimes offer so much respect to the advanced devotees, and sometimes we may feel, is this too much respect? Why are we offering so much respect to the spiritual master or to the sadhus? Because Krishna is saying this. Krishna is making this wonderful point. Um, there's one metaphor, one analogy that His Holiness Lokanath Swami gives on this point. And it's a very powerful one that he was giving in a class. He says that when there's a Kumbh Mela festival, then there's millions of people on the banks of the Ganges. And everyone wants to take a dip at that moment. So there's millions of people lined up on the bank of the Ganga. And those people who are on the front of that stampede, so to say, of that, imagine being on the bank of the river with millions of people behind you. He is saying those who are on the front, the moment the time comes when they have to bathe, even if they change their mind at that point, they will have to bathe because they have thousands of people behind them who are going to push them into the water. And therefore, now the Indian government, when this time comes, they make the whole Ganga into like a swimming pool. They fill it with sand on those locations so that when people get pushed in, they'll be in the middle of the river. They won't drown. They'll still be waist deep. So it's handled very nicely. But the point is that you like it or you don't. When you're in the front, when that moment comes, when there's nectar in the Ganga, the Kumbh Mela, when everyone is trying to dive in, if you are in the front, if you're in the middle of that group, you will be pushed in. In the same way, he says we should surround ourselves with devotees in such a way that when the moment of death comes, even if we don't want to remember Krishna, we will be pushed into remembering Krishna. And not just death, but at every day. That even though we don't want to remember Krishna because we are surrounded by Krishna's devotees, we will be pushed to remember Krishna. So that is the principle. So then I skipped now to the one of the last verses of this chapter. This chapter is actually a short chapter. It's only 30 verses. And this is the point of Dridhavrata, the point of firm determination that I was mentioning to you. So this connects very closely with this theme. And so that's why I'm discussing it in the beginning. Yesham dvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandvamoha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, Krishna makes it clear that without this dridhavrata, without this determination, we cannot, engage in a service. Because whenever we try to serve the Lord, Maya Devi will be sure to put 1,000 obstacles in our way. She will give us 1,000 reasons not to do that service. When Srila Prabhupada was translating the Gita, when he was doing his service to his spiritual master, then Krishna didn't make it easy for him. In fact, the story of Prabhupada's Gita is that Srila Prabhupada wrote the entire Gita, and then, as Prabhupada describes, his family sold it for a pack of biscuits, particularly his wife. She sold it for a pack of biscuits and tea. And he lost it. Imagine if someone wrote an entire commentary on the Gita and you just lose it. I think all of us would think that this is a sign from Krishna that we shouldn't, write, or we would lose our inspiration to do that service. It took Srila Prabhupada years, and he wrote and he wrote, and it was his only copy. And before he made copies of it, it was gone. And Srila Prabhupada then didn't think even twice. He didn't stop at that point. He then rewrote the entire Gita. And the Gita that we have today is Srila Prabhupada's second time writing the entire Gita. So without Dhridavrata, without determination, we can't achieve anything in this world. Even those who are materially successful have attained that position only because of intense and immense determination. And some devotees are very determined. Where does that determination come from? Krishna is saying not only does it come from the present life, but those who have acted piously in previous lives, those who are purified, who have purified their existence, they get this determination. Punya karma, who have been pious, punya, pious in so many lifetimes, they get this determination. So the determination to engage in bhakti is not just a mental trick. It's not just a matter of some speech. It's actually many lifetimes of work, of service before one gets this determination. And this word punya can refer to piety, but punya can also refer to bhakti or devotional service. Just like in the Krishna book, it says that the cowherd boys who were playing with Krishna, they had performed heaps of pious activities in order to play with Krishna. And so there it's explained, and Prabhupada explains that the pious activities there means that these cowherd boys who played with Krishna performed many lifetimes of devotional service before they were able to play with Krishna. So we may sometimes wonder that why is it that another devotee in this movement advances so quickly? Where did these great devotees, the great devotees of our movement, get this determination to give up everything and serve Krishna? And why don't I have that determination? Well, one reason is that they may be bringing it from their past lives. And therefore, Prabhupada says, someone who is engaged in bhakti, we must understand that in their previous lives, they performed many, many pious activities to come to this point. And another very significant point here is that determination comes from giving up a sinful life. So, how do we gain determination for bhakti? When we follow the four regulative principles, when we give up sinful life. And until we don't, we won't get that determination. Prabhupada, in one place, he writes that unless if one is engaged in illicit sex life, that person will never get the determination to practice yoga. So someone may make a show of it, but this is why one of the first principles of yoga is these four regulated principles, because one just does not get that determination. Why did Prabhupada say chanting 16 rounds and following the four regulated principles? If the holy name has everything, then why not just chanting 16 rounds? Because we will not get the determination to chant 16 rounds if we're engaged in sinful life, meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. And so the chanting is the medicine, the chanting is what saves us, but without giving up these things, we won't chant because we won't have the determination to do so. So that is very important. Um, Now, going back to the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, this is the first section. It talks about knowing Krishna. So, text one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." And this is the theme of the first 7 verses, the first section of this chapter. And Krishna starts with a very interesting claim, with a very interesting point. He says that by fixing our mind on Krishna, by practicing bhakti yoga, we can know Krishna in full. Now, in another place in the Gita, Krishna says that me no one knows. So the devotee can certainly know Krishna, but how can we say that the devotee knows Krishna in full? This seems like a contradiction, because even Krishna himself says that he doesn't know himself in full. In the Bhagavatam, there's a verse that says that even Krishna himself does not know the limits of his own Maya. Why? Because Krishna is infinite and we are finite. The devotee of the Lord is a pure devotee, but the devotee is still a finite living being, and Krishna is infinite. So, how is it that Krishna here is saying that we can know him in full? That the devotee knows Krishna in full? And this, I remember when I took Bhakti Shastri, was a point where we had a very long discussion, a very big discussion. So, following that tradition, I also want to discuss this with you.
Prabhuji, is it
Yeah.
Haribol?
Yes, Matsi, go ahead.
Is it that Krishna means that, whatever the limit of your understanding is, that, for a child, full means, A, B, C, D, to the best of your capacity, not Krishna's capacity.
I see. Yes, that's a nice way to explain it. Very nice way. So knows me in full, so full in our capacity to know Krishna. Okay, that's a very nice answer. I actually didn't think of this before, but it's a nice way to approach it. Other thoughts, other examples.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One
Right.
way to understand it could be that knowing in full means that we really can't know him, understanding and realizing that he is infinite, at least having that understanding that we
Mm.
cannot know him.
Okay, so this is a nice point that we don't know Krishna, but we don't know all the parts of the infinite. But the fact that we know that he's infinite, that is knowing Krishna in full. I think this is your point, right? That the fact that the devotee knows
Yes,
that he
Prabhuji.
does not know, and how great Krishna is. That is knowing in full.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, okay. Just like there's one philosopher, Plato, in the Western philosophy, and he said that in this world, everyone is dreaming. This world is a dream world, just like the Vedas tell us. It's not the real world. He was very much Brahman realized, Prabhupada also said. He and Socrates. So Plato, he said, we, everyone in this world is dreaming. And then he said, except for a few philosophers. He was a philosopher. So he said, except for a few philosophers who know that they are dreaming. So because they know that they're dreaming, they're actually not dreaming. So the same way, because we know that Krishna is unlimited and we don't know him, therefore we know him. Okay, good point.
Uh, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
This limitation of not being able to understand infinity, or is it restricted to the material body, material world? Like once we go to the spiritual world, will we be able to understand infinity, understand Krishna's all variegatedness, understand our own spiritual infinite being? Uh, is there anything that the Shastras say about that?
Well, that is, you put it very nicely. That is the very question we're asking. Is the pure devotees here, and that is pure devotees are the same also in the spiritual world. Do they know infinity? Because I mean, generally we would say the counterpoint is that the devotee knows Krishna because the devotee is very close to Krishna, but the devotee does not know Krishna in full. I mean, that's what everyone says. Even advanced devotees, they say, we know Krishna, devotees of the Lord know Krishna, but no one knows Krishna in full. But here, Krishna is particularly making the point in full. Prabhupada is writing in full. So that's exactly the question that you raised.
So Prabhuji,
So, Prabhu,
Please.
go ahead, Mataji.
you go ahead, Mataji. It's okay.
Okay, so knowing in full, does it mean that we know that there is nothing else to know apart from Krishna? That we have our faith in Krishna?
Ah, that's also a nice way to put it, that we know nothing else but Krishna. And we know that there's nothing else to know other than Krishna. And in that way, full. Yes. See, here, Krishna uses the word, very nice point, Mataji, that you just said. Krishna uses the word samagram, which means completely. Krishna himself is saying samagram, that they know me completely. Yes, very nice.
Prabhuji, can I try? Oh, there's
Yes.
one more Mataji. Sorry, yeah.
Yes. No, go ahead.
I was thinking to know Krishna is also to know our real identity, that we cannot relate to anything in Maya, and therefore our only source to look up to is Krishna. So therefore we're always Krishna conscious in that way.
Ah, okay. So because Krishna is also the source of Maya, we are always Krishna conscious. And this is also chapter 7, Krishna saying, I'm the taste of water, I'm present, in so many different ways. Very nice.
Prabhu, my limited understanding, you know me in full. Is Krishna going to describe everything about himself in this chapter and maybe chapter 9? So knowing him in full means whatever he's telling us, we accept it with full faith and full devotion, that this is what Krishna is saying and this is what Krishna is full, even though he may be infinite until a very whole deep lot, but whatever Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, for us, that all is full.
Okay, I like your point. I really do. This is a very nice point that you just raised. Based on what Krishna is telling us, that's how we know. Okay. Very nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, like each individual soul have a specific relationship with Krishna, and with that specific relationship, each individual soul has its own, limitation to understand Krishna. So in their specific relationship, they're able to understand Krishna specific to that relationship, then they are understanding Krishna in full.
Okay, that's a nice way, also very nice way to understand it, that in their relationship to Krishna, they're understanding him in full, and each one of us has our specific relationships. Yes. Very nice.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Kalavati
Krishna
Mataji?
Prabhuji, can I try?
Kalavati Gopi? Sorry, yeah.
Haribol.
Yes.
My thinking is that the topics of Krishna can be divided into different categories. So knowing in full may mean that we know in full certain categories, but not all the categories. So certain topics like the esoteric topics of Krishna with the gopis, that's not what we will understand in full. It's just the topics that Krishna has reserved for us to understand in full. Those are the ones that we will understand.
Okay. Yes, this is also very good, because the devotee may not know all the grains of sand that Krishna has created, but they know certain topics, certain aspects of Krishna in full. Very nice. Shulba Mataji?
Hare Krishna.
Please,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have a question also. Knowing in full, and they also are writing here that free from doubt, right? When we are absolutely sure that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and there is nothing beyond that. Is that what he's trying to say here? And I had a question in relation to this, because again in text 26, he's saying that no one knows me.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Krishna loves speaking contradictions. It's just like he's the king of contradictions. There's one verse in the Bhagavatam. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he says that how Krishna particularly specializes in speaking very elusively. So the Vedas are Krishna's words, and the Vedas are very elusive. So he speaks in the way of the Vedas. This means that he speaks in a way that no one can understand. So Krishna likes to speak in a way that no one can understand, because this is why it's confidential. This is why it's revealed through the devotee, because only those who have the key can understand. So even while speaking,
Understand through the devotee also, Prabhuji.
huh?
How do we understand it through the devotee? Yes, the great devotees would be able to understand, great souls would be able to understand what Krishna is trying to say, but how does someone in my position understand?
Yes. So very good question, very good point, and we'll answer that very soon. So in a few minutes. Very good.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, see, my understanding is really so limited. Krishna's experiences for everybody is so individual, like so personal. So, when I will experience the Krishna, it will be my experience. Whoever is, the other person is going to experience Krishna is totally different. So, it's so personal. But what Krishna is saying, what my understanding is, if you trust Krishna, if you know Krishna, you have to trust 100% in any situation. So let's say, any situation come in your life, you have to think that Krishna is with me and all this is Krishna is doing. So in short, you don't have to forget Krishna. You have to remember Krishna in any situation, and you have to have the full trust on Krishna. That means you are knowing him in full. Because if you try to understand, whole Brahman, everything, it's beyond your capacity. You cannot understand. Your understanding should be Krishna is doing everything and he is my savior. That's all. You have to remember him. That means knowing in full. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what my understanding is.
That was very nice. That was very, very nice. And thank you also for sharing your realization. So this is very valuable.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I was thinking that the fullness is applicable to the freedom from doubt rather than to Krishna. Meaning, you can think about it as completely free from doubt about me instead of completely about him free from doubt.
I see. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible, but Prabhupada says Bhagavad Gita as it is. What Krishna is saying is what Krishna is saying. So he is saying you can know me in full and then also free from doubt. So you don't have any doubts. But he's not saying you can know me free from doubt. But he's also saying you know me in full. So it's a very good point that you raise. But we should take Krishna literally. So we will keep searching for this answer. Reena Mataji, I think you were next.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I just wanted to say, like, knowing in full is just like only connecting. This is what I understand. What I understand, connecting in, if you connect with Krishna and his eyes, if you see the entire existence, you'll find there are no multiple individuals. You see only one individual. Like the Virat form. All the Shudras became the feet and Kshatriyas became hands and legs, like that. So multiple individuals, you think they exist in society, but all of them are like existing because of one individual.
They're all dependent on Krishna. They're all part of Krishna, like you're saying. So
Yeah,
every person is part of Krishna's universal form. And so knowing Krishna means knowing everything in this world.
Yeah.
So that's a very nice point. So when we know Krishna, we know everything in this world. But the problem is, that Krishna is so unlimited. So how can we know him? But this is a very good point going along with this, that by knowing Krishna, we will also know everything else in full.
Yeah.
Dear Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, another way to maybe to is that knowing him in full means that we really know the meaning of all his instructions that he's giving to us through the medium of Bhagavad Gita or through his pastimes. So understanding the real meaning behind those instructions.
So the devotee knows the essence. The devotee knows the essence of Krishna, and therefore he knows Krishna in full. This is also a very nice point, that he knows the meaning and the essence of the Krishna's words. Param Karuna Prabhu, I think you've been unmuted.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So I think the previous devotee said what I was going to say, that at a essence level, everything is revealed in 7th chapter, but as in 10th chapter, Lord Krishna says, Na asti anto vistarasya me, that there is no end to my details, to my detailed opulences. So the details are limitless, but in essence, it is possible to understand through the 7th chapter.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's this is the point. Gopal Govinda Prabhu, I think you had your hand raised.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, many devotees put their points, so I was just interested to hear. My understanding was that if we want to know Krishna, we during the process we get the misconceptions of his different forms and different paraphernalia around us. And knowing me full in the sense, we start developing the faith, and the faith in the sense that it helps us to connect with Krishna. Surva Mataji caught that point very well, that one-to-one connection. Everybody has unique connection. That unique connection will be revealed to you.
Yes. Thank you again for making this point and for highlighting this point. Yes, that each one of us has a very personal and very deep relationship with Krishna. In the interest of time, I want to give everyone an opportunity once. So Raj Prabhu, I think you haven't spoken.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'm also having very limited understanding, but I'm thinking like if we know on the Anu level and the Vibhu level, like the atomic level, that everything is made of Paramatma. And if we know that atom is Paramatma, then everything else is Paramatma. So we know in full. And also in the Vibhu level, so everything else, the biggest one is Paramatma. So that we know that there is nothing beyond that. And the smallest one is Paramatma. There is nothing smaller than that. So that way we know in full. Maybe I'm just speculating, Prabhu. If it's wrong, I'm sorry.
Yes, no, it's from the Krishna's Anu and also Vibhu. He's present within the atom, and the entire world is present within him.
Yes.
And therefore, the devotee understands this, and in this way has a great, great realization of Krishna. So I'll pause the discussion for a minute here. So all the answers that all of you have given so nicely, they're all true, and this is the beauty of Krishna. That the beauty of spiritual life is that Krishna is understood in multiple ways, and there's also multiple ways of understanding what Krishna is saying. So it's completely true what all of you are saying. And I actually got a lot of insight from hearing you, because many of the points that you made, I didn't think of them before. In addition to these points that you made, the way we understand this verse where Krishna is saying, you can know me in full, free from doubt, is we understand it literally. Krishna is saying that a devotee knows Krishna in full. And how is that possible? It's possible like this. How can the devotee know Krishna in full? We are finite. We are very infinitesimal. We are infinitesimal, and Krishna is infinite. And there's no way in the world that we can know Krishna. However, if Krishna, the infinite, decides to reveal himself to the finite, then we can know him in full. So if Krishna is actually infinite, which we say God is infinite, then we cannot limit him in any way. Then that means that even though that because Krishna is infinite, he has the power to reveal himself to the finite, even though that is logically incoherent. This is why no one suggested it, because how is it coherent for the infinite to be able to know to the finite? But precisely because Krishna is all powerful and is infinite, if Krishna chooses, Krishna can reveal himself in full to whoever he wants. And therefore, we understand here that Krishna is being serious. Krishna does mean what he says, that a devotee can know Krishna in full, but not by any of his own realization, not because he knows Krishna or has even seen Krishna, but because Krishna decided that I will reveal myself in full to this devotee. And how is that possible? I mean, how is it even possible when we find in other places, like many of you pointed out, just a few verses later, Krishna says, no one knows me. Me, no one knows. And even Krishna himself says in the Bhagavatam, I don't know my own limits. How is that possible? It's possible because Krishna is all powerful. So the solution to this actually is in achintya, or inconceivableness. One of the qualities of Krishna is that it is achintya. Therefore, our philosophy is called achintya bheda bheda, inconceivable oneness and difference. This whole world is Krishna, yet we are not Krishna. We are Krishna, but we are not Krishna. We're nothing but Krishna because we come from Krishna, yet we're still not Krishna. The fragrance is nothing but the flower, but the fragrance is still not the flower. In the same way, Krishna is infinite, yet he is also fully knowable. That is his bhakta vatsala, his most wonderful quality. And he's fully knowable, yet he is not knowable. He is infinite. How is this possible? Because only if Krishna reveals himself. And therefore, devotee prays for the Lord's mercy. He prays, he tries to understand Krishna through the descending process, like we discussed last time, the cat method, not the monkey, not through the ascending process. Because like the sparrow in the ocean, we can only know Krishna if he reveals himself to us. And if he chooses to do so, there's no limit to what we will know. So we'll know him in full and also free from doubt. So this is a very important point to remember. and it can give us great inspiration that we also can know Krishna fully, because Krishna is promising here in the Gita. So Indu Mataji, you have a comment to make? Question?
I have a question, Prabhuji, but please give me a moment. Please continue. I'll ask you at the end, Prabhu.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
I
Krishna.
had a quick question. May I go?
Yes, please.
So, Prabhuji, the achintya bheda bhed, right? So anything that can't be explained, then we'll just rely on this inconceivable theory, because I have seen this in the past that, oh, this contradiction cannot be explained and it's just achintya. Then when you're trying to preach this to outsiders who may not have that faith in Krishna, then this is kind of a dead end, right? I don't know if I'm wrong. Anything that which you can't logically explain, you just say it's inconceivable.
So, very nice point. It's a contradiction, but it's also an explanation. Why is it not just a contradiction? Because one of the very qualities of Krishna is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, that He is unlimited, He is inconceivable. So, so the other way around, yeah. So the other way around is also contradiction. If we say that God is unlimited, yet God does not have the power to reveal Himself to us, then that's also contradiction. And if we say God is unlimited and He has the power to reveal us to us, that is also contradiction. Because if He's unlimited, then how can He fully reveal Himself to us? So the very definition of unlimitedness makes us ask these questions. And we start with the very point that God is unlimited. So there's no surprise here. Now, the contradictions that are not good are the contradictions that show internal inconsistency. So, for example, the contradiction that people say, that certain religions say, that God is all merciful, God is unlimited, yet hell is also unlimited. So they say if you don't love God in this life, then you'll go to hell for eternity. Yet they'll say God is unlimitedly compassionate. Well, that is an internal contradiction. You said God is unlimitedly compassionate, yet hell is eternal. How is that possible? But this contradiction that we're speaking of, this is not an internal contradiction. This is just describing the nature of the unlimited. That Krishna is unlimited. Nothing else is unlimited, but Krishna is unlimited. Therefore, Krishna can do both things. So, yes, it's true. We agree. Inconceivability will always be there. Even in atheism, even if you're an atheist, you cannot explain why the world has 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. You just say it's inconceivable. There's always some things that, or why is it? This is the basic question of philosophy. Why is there something rather than nothing? So this is not a religious question. This is just a basic, simple question that a child can ask. Why is there something rather than nothing? And there's a philosopher by the name of Heidegger, who became one of the most famous philosophers in Western philosophy, simply because of asking this question. And he went a little crazy trying to find the answer to this question. And the response to that question is simply that there's something because there is something. There's something because there is something more than nothing. So even our acharyas say that at a certain point, we come to the point that things are because they are the way they are. We can only ask so many questions to a certain point, and then we have to say they're just the way they are. Why do I have 2 hands rather than 3 hands? Neither the devotee nor the religionist can explain it. Why do things happen by chance? Well, because things happen by chance. That's something that the atheist takes for given. So everyone has to accept that certain things that are axioms, that the way just things are. And rather than accepting everything to happen by chance, we just accept one thing, that Krishna is unlimited and inconceivable. And that's just the way things are.
Prabhu, can I make a point?
Yes.
Like probably one way to understand the inconceivability is that that is the nature of the material world. So we are ignorant. That is why we are here. If we are capable of understanding everything, then that is chit, right? So then we wouldn't be here. So probably that is a feature of the material world, that so many things are inconceivable to the material mind.
Yes.
Might be conceivable to the jivatma when it is self-realized.
Exactly. It's such a nice point. We're conditioned. So that's the other problem. It's like someone asking, uh, in your math class, you are working with 8 dimensions, which is very easy to do in math, to work with a problem formula with 8 dimensions. And he says, why can't you explain it to me? We know that 8 dimensions exist, multi-dimension worlds, or at least theorems or ideas exist. And we work with them in mathematics, yet we don't know how you can actually have 8 dimensions. It's a contradiction. It's inconceivable, yet we know that it is true. It's a very nice point. Because we only live in a 3-dimensional world. So that's our limit. Yes. Ambika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, we talked about it, and I'm very happy that, you talked about verse 7.1 and 7.28 together, because in 7.1, we are saying that, we can know only Krishna if Krishna reveals, he decides to reveal, and then that's the only way we can know him. But at the same time, in verse 28, we said, we have to have a dread. We should be Dridhavarta. We should have that determination, so we have to have a determination to know Krishna. So there is a verse also, right, that, ye yatham mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. So, the way we surrender to Krishna will reveal it to us, like slowly, one by one step after another step. So I think that's very, very important, that this is the only way we will know Krishna. And Prabhuji, so in that relation, actually, I had a question when I was reading chapter, and this is sort of, I think, all related. So that's why I'm bringing this up here. So verse 6.8, there is a translation, and I was reading this. It says, a Krishna conscious person is realized. A Krishna consciousness person has a realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna, because he is satisfied with the pure devotional service. By a realized knowledge, one becomes perfect, and by transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his conviction. But by mere academic knowledge, one can easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. So that's what we talked about. Some of these points are like, apparent contradictions. But, if we get deluded just by the base of the academic knowledge, I think, that's where we see, oh, no, this was said this way, but this is that way. So it's like an apparent contradiction. So it is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled, and because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with the mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. So I think, that when I was reading this, I got confused that, what is the difference between, and I think we kind of touched based about it. So there is academic knowledge, there is a realized knowledge, there is a academic knowledge, and there is a transcendental knowledge. So once somebody comes to a point of transcendental, then all of this contradiction doesn't really matter. But I think when we start learning about the scriptures in the beginning stage, it's merely morely academic, and I think that's where we see, oh, this is contradicting. So I think once we accept there is really no contradiction, because Krishna is infinite, I think that's where probably we step into the transcendental knowledge and devotional service. So if you can, Prabhu, touch upon that a little bit more, I think it will help me understand better. But that's my understanding.
Yes. Well, one thing to note is that in academics also, in academic knowledge, they also talk about contradictions. And they also have to recognize that there are contradictions. Like there's some academics who write books on the nature of infinity, and how can we understand infinite? And so I mean, the world is very miraculous. Einstein said that whether there's a God or there isn't a God, no one can deny the fact that the world is very miraculous. And he says that the modern philosophers are trying to rid the world of the miraculous. And he says that's a great mistake. So it's very important to understand that that Krishna conscious philosophy also stands up to academics. And even on this point that we were saying, knowing in full, and then later Krishna says, no one knows me, Prabhupada actually gives one reason how we can make sense of that. He says that the devotee knows Krishna in full, but then because Krishna is infinite and he's ever expanding, then Krishna expands more. And then the devotee doesn't know him. And then again, he knows Krishna in full. They know Krishna in full, and then Krishna expands more. So both things can be true. Because one philosopher, so I have heard, challenge Prabhupada with this perennial question of philosophy, which is, if God is all powerful, is he powerful enough to build a rock that he cannot lift? So it's a similar problem like this. If God is all powerful, is he powerful enough to build a rock that he cannot lift? Well, if he's all powerful, he should be able to do that. But if he's all powerful, he should be able to lift it. So I have heard, I don't have a reference for this, but Prabhupada's response was, yes, Krishna can lift a rock, Krishna can build a rock that he cannot lift, and then he can lift it. So the response is very simple. He can build a rock that he cannot lift, and then after that he can lift it. So there's so many contradictions in this world, but they are actually all resolved in the nature of Krishna. And anyone who says that there's no contradictions in this world is simply just living an illusion. There are contradictions. It's just how we respond to it. That's the difference between an atheist or a theist. So there's no Krishna is like this. Kishore Prabhu, I think you had a comment at a certain point, and then we missed you. I think you haven't spoken until now.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nothing, bro. I think I thought as we know, the soul as a Paramatma, he lives in the body, humans, right? If you know the as we say, look at the Pandita, even the dog eater, you look at the same way as you look at the Pandita, even the dog eater. So so that you treat everyone as as Paramatma sitting in the bodies, that's why that's why you can realize the Krishna, right? You feel like you're connecting to super soul, and you realize super soul in yourself. Sometimes you feel like someone is indicating you inside, right? So it could be Paramatma. That is my understanding.
Yes, and this is Krishna actually answers this, gives this answer that we have said, which you are saying now. You're actually bringing it into focus, this point that Krishna says in chapter 10, Chaturshloki Gita. So one of the most important verses of the Gita, he says, Tesham evanukam partam aham agyana nasham nashamatma bhavasto jnana deepena bhashvata. He says, I from within the heart, with the shining lamp of knowledge, destroy the ignorance, the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna himself clearly says that Krishna is the one who reveals himself from within the heart, which you said from the Paramatma. And that's how the devotee knows Krishna in full. Because he says, chapter 10, I reveal from within my heart, from within the heart.
Prabhuji, can I share something? Actually, I'm not able to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, sure. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so about these contradictions, I mean, I was thinking we will keep getting these contradictions as in how we read about Krishna. There will always be something which will make us think about it, but it all depends how submissively we read about Krishna rather than being challenged in challenging spirit. Only if we have that submissive mood, then Krishna will reveal himself to us. So we could have that faith and submissiveness in the words of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada.
Yes. Yes, and that's why Krishna says Tad vidhi pranipatina pariprashnena sevaya. It's through that submissive mood, through the descending process, that we come to realize Krishna. And there's no way through our power that we can know Krishna or even love Krishna or attain Krishna. It's all dependent on Krishna. We just make our effort. We try to be submissive and please Him. Yes. Thank you very much. So those of you who have more comments, please hold the thought. We will get back to you. I'll just continue now and we'll move forward with the chapter, and we'll come back to this discussion at the question and answer at the end. But this was a very nice discussion, I must say. It was your responses and your points were so wonderful, and we really dive deep into this verse, which is the first verse of this chapter. Very important verse. So now, in the next section, texts 8 through 12, Krishna tells us that he is both the source of material and spiritual energies. So Krishna tells us how he is present in this material world and how we can remember him at every time, at every moment. Krishna does this a few times in the Gita, most vividly in chapter 10. But he does it here also. And this shows the importance of seeing Krishna in everything. So some of you made the point, actually repeatedly you made this point, that knowing Krishna in full means understanding that Krishna is both the source of not just the spiritual world, but also the material world, and how all things are part of Krishna. And this is what Krishna here is telling us. This is why he's telling us here. So text 8, O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound and ether and the ability. So Krishna is the taste of water. This is one of the most commonly quoted phrases. We very significant, and it's interesting. It's the first thing that Krishna says in this list. Krishna is the taste of water. Now you might say, well, I thought Krishna would be more tasty. Why water? Krishna is a taste of water, particularly because it is water that gives taste to all other things. You might have experienced this when you have a very dry mouth and you eat something very dry, you cannot taste it. It's a medical fact. So it is in fact liquid or water, and the most basic liquid is water. Without water, we don't have taste. We cannot taste anything. And therefore, actually the taste in everything is the taste of water. And it's variations of it. And therefore, Krishna is saying, I am the taste of water. So the difference between an advanced devotee and a non-advanced devotee is that the devotee sees Krishna, the advanced devotee sees Krishna everywhere. In every situation, the devotee does not see the situation. The devotee says, this is Krishna coming to me through this situation. And so this is actually Krishna. Krishna teaching me something, Krishna loving me in a certain way by giving me a nice position, a privilege, or this is Krishna. This is not the position or the wealth, but this is Krishna. So the devotee sees Krishna in all things, in all places, at all times. And through this description, Krishna is helping us in how we can see him in all situations, in all times, and in all places. So some of us are very talented. So we have to understand that that talent is Krishna. That's not us. So here, Krishna is saying, I am the sound and ether and the ability in man. I have no reason to be proud of this ability because this ability is Krishna. It is not me. Without the sun and the moon, nothing can live in this world. What gives life to this world is Krishna, the sun and the moon. Text 9, I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am the heat and fire. I am the life of all that lives. I am the presence. I am the penances of all ascetics. O son of Pratha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. So some of us are very powerful. We may be physically very powerful. We may be in powerful positions. We may have strength. But remember that Krishna is the power in us. In a moment, he can take it away. Like in the case of Arjuna, he was the greatest archer in the world. But the moment, just to show the world, not Arjuna, he was a pure devotee, but to show the world, the moment Krishna took it away from him, he could not even fight with a few cowherds. And then Arjuna says in the Bhagavatam, he says, now I understand that I was only able to hold this Gandiva bow because of Krishna's mercy. We were only able to fight not because of my strength, but of Krishna's mercy. Everything in this world happens only because of Krishna's mercy. And only the greatest fool thinks that they are in control, that it is because of them. So the devotee's realization is very realistic, very genuine. And Arjuna, in this way, is understanding this. Krishna is my intelligence. Krishna is my power. Again, Krishna repeats this in text 11. He says, I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles, O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. So Krishna is the strength of the strong, but Krishna is the best of all things, right? Krishna is making this point to show that he is the best of whatever we find in this world. Again, this goes to the philosophy of Chintya Bheda Veda. Everything is Krishna, so even the worst is Krishna. But still, it's different than Krishna. This is a very key, important philosophy to understand. That things are the transformation of Krishna, and something that is a transformation of something else is not the same thing. So everything is earth. My house is also earth. The pot that we cook in is also earth. But the sand outside and the pot that I use are not the same thing. There's still a transformation. It is one and also different. So this is Achintya Bheda Bheda, but it's also an object of our experience. We know in this world how things can be one and also different. Everything is earth, but things are also different. They're also transformations. So Krishna is everything, but he is most known, he is most visible in the powerful, wonderful, best things in this world. He is most present in those things. So he is the strength of the strong, even of those who are passionate. But that strength leads to destruction, anger, madness. So Krishna is saying, I'm not really present. You cannot really see my presence in that way. You can see my presence is more, I am more physically present, so to say, more personally present in the strength of the strong, of those who are devoid of passion and desire. So he is present. The king is the representative of God. The scriptures say, like Maharaj Yudhishthira, when they are devotees of the Lord, when they're devoid of passion and desire, then you can see the power of God present within them. But when they're full of passion and desire, they are still, that position, is still, there's some power that they received from Krishna only, and that power is a symbol of Krishna, but not so much, because it has passion and desire. In the same way, sex life is a human impulse. But Krishna is present in the sex life when it's not contrary to religious principles. So Krishna is saying, when we have that impulse, we can still be in touch with Krishna if we do it according to the scriptures, according to Krishna's rule. And then that is Krishna. So Krishna is telling us how he will be present, when he will be present in his more fullness, and when he will be more hidden from us. So these are verses for meditation. When we have desires, material desires, of eating something, drinking something, of sex life, of power, of strength, then we have to remember that Krishna is telling us how to pursue these desires so that Krishna is present in whatever we do. Text 12, know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am, in one sense, everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. So Krishna is everything, yet Krishna is independent. Here we go, Achintya Bheda Bheda. Krishna is teaching the philosophy of oneness and difference. The modes of nature come from him, but he is not under the modes of nature. He is all the states of being, goodness, passion, ignorance, but he is still separate. So this is the core of our philosophy right here. It is very important. Okay, next verse. Then after telling us that these modes are Krishna, and Krishna is above them and he's produced them, Krishna tells us how can we cross the modes. So in this world, everything is the modes. As I mentioned before, all colors are combinations of three colors. In the same way, all material situations, all of Prakriti is a combination of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And therefore, Maya really manifests in terms of the gunas. Maya does not really, come to us directly. It comes to us through the gunas. So overcoming Maya, rising above Maya, means rising above the gunas. It practically means rising above passion, ignorance, and goodness. So this is our main challenge. This is our human condition, our human problem. And Krishna here is telling us how to overcome it. So very key. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So no one knows Krishna because they're deluded by this covering. Text 14, Daivi Hirsha Gunamayi, one of the very famous verses of the Gita. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So, Daivi Hirsha Gunamayi, this divine energy, Daivi Hirsha, is very difficult to overcome, but we can cross it. So in this word, Daivi Hirsha, 2 points are mentioned here. One is that this is Krishna's energy. The material world is Krishna's also energy. It's also spiritual because it's coming from Krishna in the ultimate sense. And the second point that's communicated by the word divine energy is that this is Krishna's energy and therefore it is more powerful than us. No matter how spiritually strong we are, we cannot compete with Krishna's Maya. Ultimately, Maya will win. So therefore, the only way that we can compete with this divine energy is if we surrender to Krishna. So we should not think, and Prabhupada warned devotees many times that because I have chanted my 16 rounds today, because I have done my sadhana, I can go into a bar and associate with the modes of nature. Because, I'm spiritually pure. Because that power is still more powerful than us. We're very small, and Krishna's material power is very, very large. And so therefore, we always have to take shelter of Krishna. We also always have to be careful and can never feel overconfident because it's only his mercy that will continue to protect us. There's no point when we're advanced enough that we won't fall down. And that's why Prabhupada used to pray to Krishna. Prabhupada told his disciples, he said, your problem is that you are not afraid of Maya enough. This is your problem, he said, that you're not enough afraid of Maya. And he said, on a different occasion, he said, I pray to Krishna every day that I may not fall in Maya. So imagine Srila Prabhupada was a Prema Bhakta on the highest stages of Prema Bhakti, eternally liberated soul, and he used to pray to Krishna every day that please, I'm praying to you, please don't let me fall in Maya. So how much the devotee respects this Maya because it is Krishna's Maya and doesn't take it for granted. And those who do, they fall down. And in the Bhagavatam, Krishna shows us very starkly through the example of Mohini Murti and Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yathashambhu. He's the greatest devotee of the Lord. Yet he became proud of his asceticism. The Bhagavatam specifically mentions this. He became proud, and therefore Krishna came as Mohini Murti, and Lord Shiva chased Mohini Murti, and Mohini Murti particularly ran in front of all the hermitages of all the sages while Shiva was chasing him, just to teach all the sages never to become overconfident of their spiritual perfection, to show them that even Lord Shiva can fall down because this divine energy is Krishna's energy. Although it is lower, it is still God's power. So then Krishna goes to a very interesting, he takes a different turn and he says, who is it that surrenders to him? So if surrender is the thing that gets out of this material world, very important point, prapatti, the thing that Ramanujacharya taught. And here it is proven by the Gita. He said that the way out of this material world is prapatti, surrender to God. He emphasized it even more than bhakti, because he said bhakti is very difficult. It's true, it is very difficult. But prapatti, surrender, we can do. And this is why Prabhupada said many times that even if we're not very advanced, we should try to be. We should try to do perfectly sadhana, everything. But if we just surrender to Krishna, meaning that we do devotional service for Krishna, we work for, we surrender our life to Krishna, then Krishna will pick us up. The Guru will pick us up. The devotees will pick us up. So Ramanujacharya tells the same thing. Prapatti, he focuses most on surrender. This is the way out. And actually, prapadyante, Krishna actually uses the same word. So if surrender is the way that gets us out, now Krishna tells us who surrenders to him and who does not. To surrender or not, that is the question. And first he talks about those who don't surrender unto him. There's 4 types of people who don't surrender to Krishna. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. So in the purport, we don't have so much time now. Prabhupada explains these 4 types of people who surrender and who don't surrender to Krishna. Who don't surrender to Krishna. The grossly foolish, Naradhama, who are lowest among mankind. Mudha, and then Naradhama. And then whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, Maya Parhita Jnana. The mental speculators who are out to try to kill God through their knowledge, trying to. They cannot, but they're trying to. And who partake in the atheistic natures of the demons, they do not surrender unto me. So there's no shortage of this in the material world. I've put some titles here of famous atheists who are examples of this. Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion. God is just a delusion. He's the Oxford Professor for the Public Understanding of Science, Richard Dawkins. So imagine the Oxford Professor for the Public Understanding of Science is a committed atheist. What does this mean? That this person is going to tell people that science means atheism. And this is why people have the impression that if you're a scientist, you have to be an atheist. That's not true, but that's the impression. This is bias, right? Science itself never says that anything about God. It never proves or disproves God. But this is what they say, these atheists. Christopher Hitchens, God is not great. trying to show God is not great. I am great. I am God. My book is great, but God is not great. So trying to take the role of God. Something has to be great, right? I mean, if nothing is great, why should I read your book? No, my book is great, but God is not great. And then breaking the spell, Daniel Dennett. He says that religion is this big spell that all of us, the 70 people on this call, we are all wasting our time in this big spell. But when the time of death comes, then Daniel Dennett will be encountered by another spell, which is what happens after death, the fear of death, which is what great philosophers experience. And I have a personal experience of this. My brother's philosophy professor never believed in God, but when he was on his deathbed in the hospital, he called all of his favorite students, and my brother was there, one of them. And he told my brother that now I'm afraid of death. And now I'm thinking about God. So we are so proud during our life, but Krishna makes it all clear when we have to face him in the form of time, right? And then this last one I put by Antony Flew. Antony Flew is one of the most famous atheists of the modern world. His whole life he argued for atheism. He gave some of the best arguments for atheism. He's not as much of a popular atheist as like Dawkins is, but he was actually, philosophically speaking, one of the greatest atheists of all time. And in the modern time. And amazing thing is that a week before, literally a week before he died, it was not a week, it was a few years before he died, he changed his mind and he said there is a God. This is a true story. And then he published this book. So every book that he had before, he had an exact book by the name of There Is No God. And then he published a book, There Is No God, with the no crossed out. So he changed his mind. So ultimately, the point I'm telling this is that these people do surrender to Krishna. But while they are big and proud, they don't surrender to Krishna. This is what Krishna is saying. So ultimately, everyone has to surrender to Krishna because everyone is ultimately an eternal loving servant of God. And so at a certain point, Krishna will force us to see the truth, or you could say remove the ignorance, the illusion, and they ultimately will surrender. In fact, it's better to be an atheist than to not worry about God. People who are always arguing and fighting and against God make more spiritual advancement than people who just don't even think of the question. Because anger is a form of attraction. We only get angry at people who, well, not only, but generally, we get angry at people who we love, like our family members, right? We sometimes get angry with them. So Krishna even appreciates that, but he does not like it when we forget him, because then we're not making any advancement. And then there's 4 types of people who do surrender to Krishna. Who are these 4? Chaturvidha bhajante mam. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. And these are pious. It's easy to miss words when Krishna speaks. So 4 kinds of people surrender to Krishna, but he adds a word to it. He says 4 kinds of pious men and women begin to render service to Krishna. So even if a person goes to God looking for a golden coin, for gold coin, that person is pious. Because that person has gone to God in search of wealth. That person has not stolen or hasn't taken shelter of evil to fulfill his desires, but has taken shelter of Krishna. And therefore, that person is pious. A person who is sick and distressed and goes to Krishna, that person is pious. rather than hating God in times of distress, that person is surrendering to Krishna, loving God, seeking God. They are pious. And the person who is seeking God out of a curiosity is also pious. And the fourth person who has knowledge and is searching for the truth out of a desire to not just know things, not just inquisitive, but actually out of a desire to know the supreme truth and attain the goal of life, that person is also pious. And of the four, the fourth one, Krishna says, is the dearest to him. He's the most pious because they are approaching God in knowledge. They're approaching God through knowledge. And this is a question that I had for a long time. I was thinking, like there's so many people who serve God, and certain devotees are considered very great devotees, and others, are like, let's say, they're sweeping the temple in India, simple person sweeping the temple every day, but they're not really like devotees. They're hired to do the work, or they may even have an attraction. But the devotee of the Lord makes more progress. They start asking questions. They start leading a very spiritual life. Why doesn't the person who's doing seva, but why isn't that person making as much advancement? And the difference here is in knowledge. Doing devotional service without knowledge and doing devotional service with knowledge brings different results. Doing devotional service with knowledge, in knowledge, and with a particular goal in mind and under guidance has a very effective result. And otherwise, bhakti will always help us. It will add to our heap of pious activities, but that bhakti will not have that much of an effect. So, although we stress bhakti, here Krishna is pointing out that knowledge we also have to stress, because devotional service done in knowledge and under guidance of the pure devotee is most dearest to Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question right here. Can I ask?
Sure. Yes.
Like you mentioned, the sweeper, he's doing his job, even though he's sweeping the temple, but because he's being paid and maybe he doesn't have pure knowledge. So how will we compare that sweeper with a karmi or with a materialistic person or another sweeper who is doing a job at another person? Like what is the scope for this sweeper compared to the other? I understood the scope for a devotee and a sweeper, but what will be the otherwise?
Okay, nice point. Actually, your question, the same question, yes, was asked by Parikshit Maharaj to Shukadev Goswami regarding the gopis. After Shukadev Goswami describes the Rasa Leela to Parikshit Maharaj and the glorious activities of the gopis, then Parikshit Maharaj asks Shukadev Goswami, he says that these gopis did not know Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet, they simply saw him as their lover. They simply saw him as their lover. And other people also see other people as lovers. So why is it that the gopis made such spiritual advancement by seeing Krishna as their lover and others don't? The point being that they didn't love Krishna as God. They didn't know that he's God, and they weren't doing it as a service to God. They were just loving, like girls naturally love boys and boys naturally love girls. So why their activity of loving becomes the highest devotees of the Lord, and others don't reach that goal? And to this, Shukadev Goswami responds. He says that fire burns, no matter if you know it or you don't. Fire burns the child without knowledge and the person with knowledge. It does not make any distinction. In the same way, anyone who approaches Krishna in any way, shape, or form, simply by coming into contact with Krishna, that person will make spiritual advancement, even though they're doing the same thing. So someone comes and builds a temple for Krishna. He's a construction worker, a contracting company. It's everyday contracting, and he's built, he's built casinos, and he's built um, malls, and he also comes builds a temple with no attraction to God, simply for the money. But the fact that he's building a temple, he will make spiritual advancement because they were in touch with Krishna. However, if someone is building the same temple in knowledge and with the feeling, I am building this temple for God, the same bricklayer who is laying bricks is laying the bricks thinking, there'll be a very beautiful temple here, and therefore I will do it with more attention, or with the same attention, but with some excitement. That person doing it in knowledge will make more spiritual advancement because they're doing it conscientiously with intention. So these are the three levels. The person who is just doing the work without any connection with Krishna will make no advancement. The person who's doing it for anything for Krishna but without knowledge, like the contractor building the temple without knowledge, will make some advancement. And the devotee who's working to build the temple, also building, but with knowledge, will make the most advancement.
Thank you, Prabhu. I understood nicely. I really appreciate your help me understanding. Related to that, I'll quickly ask you just one example. Suppose my neighbors come to my house and I have some spiritual program, some sadhu is coming, or it's a devotee program, and they are not serving directly the deities, but they are helping me in my house, maybe cleaning, or maybe taking care of the children, or maybe taking care of different things, but not directly the deities, or not directly with Maharaj arrival. But there are so many
Yes.
so many errands happens when we have a devotee program. And if we are engaged unknowingly in this whole thing, so are they still getting benefited even though they don't know, or is it like we are engaging them in our service instead of in Krishna's service? Because that's not a direct service to Krishna.
Yes. Well, very, very nice question, actually. This is a good point. Because the devotee never considers himself a devotee, therefore the devotee tries to engage everyone in Krishna's service or the service of other devotees. So, for example, going back to example, the flower shop that has bought the flowers and then dyed the flowers and put them there on sale gets spiritual benefit when you buy their flowers and you offer it to your deities. And you as a devotee won't think that they get spiritual benefit when they when you smell the flower, or if you were to break it and smell the flower. But the other devotees will feel that if this person gave you a flower and you smelt it, they made spiritual advancement because they did something nice for a devotee. So there's so many examples of devotees who become devotees because of people who became devotees because they helped a devotee. They didn't do anything for Krishna directly. They didn't even know that the devotee was a devotee, but because they helped the devotee, they made spiritual advancement. So to answer your question, except for ourselves, everyone else, we feel that to whoever who they do service, devotee or Krishna, they will make spiritual advancement.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice question. Rupa Vilas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Dhanavad Prabhu. In this verse, you have displayed the inquisitive and who is searching for knowledge. Seems like both of them are searching for something. So what exactly is the difference between Jigyasu and Jnani?
Yes, that's a good question. It's a very, I had the same question. It's a very subtle difference, but there is a difference. One is inquisitive in the sense like, people want to know what the cosmos is, what's behind the cosmos. We as human beings have the need or the desire to search for knowledge. And just recently I shared it on the group, this video of the whole universe and how there's thousands of galaxies. And so there's sort of a fascination. And because we're meant to know about God, we have that inquisitiveness. But this person is more out of for intellectual pleasure, is searching God. And the fourth one is actually searching to find the truth and know God. So he's not searching exactly just for intellectual pleasure, because the inquisitive oftentimes end up staying professional students. And when you give them the answer, then they start asking new questions, or they want to ask questions for the sake of asking questions. And like so many philosophers do, actually saying that you have an answer is very, very uncool. So you always have to be like a skeptic. So that's more the inquisitive as opposed to the who is searching for knowledge.
I agree with you here, but somewhere in Nectar of Devotion, I think, or somewhere, there is example of Shaunaka Rishi to be inquisitive. I don't know why he is in that category.
Well, see, the devotee is also inquisitive, but the problem here is the English word inquisitive. What Krishna
Okay.
is saying is inquisitive in the sense of a mental speculator. That's the third category. And the fourth category, the devotee is also searching, so he's also inquisitive. But the motivation for the inquisitiveness is to find the truth, not just to satisfy or enjoy intellectual curiosity.
Got it. Yeah.
Just
Thank you,
like
sir.
Alex, this Professor Dimmock. Professor Dimmock translated the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he did so before Prabhupada translated it. And until the end of his life, he's no longer alive, he never became a devotee. He was inquisitive. He wanted to know what's in this book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's the highest book, yet very little advancement. And someone else who was taking drugs and hardly knew how to read, and that person comes and they read Chaitanya Charitamrita and they become a sannyasi in our movement, a great devotee. It's a very true story of many sannyasis. So what was the difference between the two? The first one, Dimmock, studied it more carefully and was a great scholar. And he did not make spiritual advancement that much. He didn't make. And someone else read only one volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita and they became a devotee. Because their motivation in their search was different.
So the fourth one is who wants to apply this knowledge in his life.
Nice. Yes. I will continue forward and then we'll have more questions very soon. We're almost at the end. This is a short chapter, so we'll just finish this and then we'll continue. So then speaking on this point of knowledge, actually this has a perfect segue. Text 19, Krishna says, who is the person? So Krishna is saying that the person in knowledge who's doing devotional service is very dear to him. And where does that knowledge lead? And also this applies to those who are inquisitive, those who are searching for knowledge. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. This is a very important verse of the Gita, like the last verse of chapter 6, which says Yogi Nam api sarvesham. In this verse, Krishna is saying, who is the highest jnani? After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So in chapter 6, Krishna told us who is the greatest yogi. In chapter 7, Krishna is telling us who is the greatest jnani. After many, many births of amassing knowledge, due to that knowledge, one will surrender to God. And so therefore, one who has surrendered to God, we should understand to be the most intelligent. The person we should understand that they have a lot of knowledge to come to that point. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada said that a devotee is most intelligent. This is the quality of a devotee. They are the most intelligent. Because only after, one cannot surrender unless one is very intelligent. And then Krishna warns us. He says that surrender is the way out. Surrender is the way we can know Krishna. He says these 4 types of people surrender to him. And then to further sharpen this discussion, he says, now be careful, don't surrender to someone else. Make sure to surrender to me as a person, me, Krishna, standing before you. So here he says surrender can be misplaced, and it can be misplaced in 2 ways. I'll just read these. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto the demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. I am in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. So the first place surrender is misplaced is if we worship a demigod. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. Krishna's warning us because he says if you worship the wrong person, you won't get the supreme planet. You'll get stuck at a rest area somewhere. Text 24, now the second place we can misplace it. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. This verse is such a slap on impersonalism that I don't know how people can say that the Gita is telling us that we should worship the unborn within Krishna. In black and white, Krishna says, even in the Sanskrit, if you look at the Sanskrit, Krishna clearly says that don't think that I was impersonal before, now I have assumed personality. I am the Supreme Person. This is my higher nature. I am eternal. There's no impersonal that preceded me. And last verse, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. In verses such as these, there's other verses in the Gita also like this. This word never, Prabhupada says that we have to take it metaphorically, not literally. Krishna is saying, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. We don't believe in eternal damnation. At a certain point, Krishna will be manifest to them. But the point is, until they are foolish and intelligent, Krishna will not be manifest, will never be manifest to them. Like there is this verse in the Gita where Krishna says, I perpetually cast them in this material world. Prabhupada says perpetually doesn't mean forever and ever. Perpetually means for a very long time until they come to their senses. It's just like in our own language, in our own speaking, we may tell our friend, you are always lazy. We may tell someone, you are always lazy. Now, this doesn't mean that that person is literally always lazy. There's times when they're not lazy and they're active and all these things. It just means that most of the time, or for a very long time, or we say to someone, you are always sleeping. You're always sleeping. My Guru Maharaj told me this many occasions. When I was traveling with him or I was serving him, then he would say, you're always sleeping. Because I would sleep, he would sleep 4 hours a day and I would sleep like 6 or 7 hours a day. So devotees should not sleep so much. So you say you're always sleeping. That didn't literally mean that I was always sleeping 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. No, it's a way of saying. So similarly, the scriptures at many points, they say They never achieve liberation. They eternally stay in the material world. So those are ways of saying that it's been too long, and it's not to be taken literally. So this is where surrender can be misplaced. Be careful of this. Krishna is saying, don't worship a demigod, don't worship his impersonal form. And we can rise above all this bewilderment by taking shelter of Krishna, by gaining knowledge of Krishna. And this is also another very famous verse that Prabhupada quotes many times. And this is why I put it here. And Prabhupada loves to quote this actually, and it has a very big, very important significance in our philosophy. Ichha dvesha samuthena vanvamohena bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. O sign of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion. Bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. Once again, O sign of Bharata, conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by qualities arisen from desire and hate. So, here, why this verse is here. So this whole section is saying that you can overcome bewilderment through knowledge of Krishna. That's 26 to text 30. But this verse in particular is just making a very simple point. It's telling us why is it that we are born into delusion. So we are all born into ignorance. And Krishna here is saying we're born into delusion because of desire and hate, from desire and hate. So in Srila Prabhupada's lectures, the classes that Srila Prabhupada gave when he was on this planet, on many occasions, when devotees asked, why did we fall into the material world? Prabhupada quoted this verse, Ichha dvesha. He said, because of desire and hate. Why did we fall in this material world? Why are we born in ignorance? Because of our own desire, Ichha, and hate, dvesha. In English, we translate as hate. Hate is one way to translate it, but dvesha means duality, difference, separateness, dvesha. So when we're in the spiritual world, we have the desire and we gain a sense of difference from Krishna. My desire is different than Krishna's desire. So not desire alone. We always have desire, but desire that is separate from Krishna. That desire has brought us into this material world. Desiring something separate from Krishna. And then in the Bhagavatam, we find this said very clearly in the story of Puranjana. In the 4th canto, Puranjana reincarnates as Vaidharbi, and when Vaidharbi is about to enter the fire, Krishna comes to her in the form of a Brahmana, and Krishna tells her, he says that you and I were once together, and we used to play together. He actually uses this word frolic, play. But you, desiring carnal pleasures, desiring to enjoy your senses, you left me and you came to this world. And I am Avigyata Sakha. I am your unknown friend. And I have been accompanying you in all of these lifetimes. Unknown to you, I have been with you this entire time. Krishna tells Vaidharvi, I know you, but you don't know me. And we were once together. And I am your unknown friend, Avigyata Sakha. So it is desire and hate, that is our separate desire, that brought us to this material world and that keeps us in this material world. And therefore, becoming a pure devotee means having no other desire other than Krishna's desire. Becoming a pure devotee means your desire and Krishna's desire is one. It's very simple. Whatever Krishna wants, that's what I want. So this is my last slide. And to just end, I want to read the purport to one verse, which is very beautiful. This 727, because we should hear from Srila Prabhupada just very quickly. It's a very short purport. So this is the same verse that we talked about a lot during the class. Purport: those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. It's interesting, Prabhupada, this is a different verse, but Prabhupada is talking about the same thing we just talked about. And he talks about, it's kind of like a very nice summary of the chapter. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulated principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this again is a summary. So Prabhupada mentioned the four types of people, the people who don't surrender to Krishna. And then this sentence is so beautiful. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulated principles of bhakti and who have acted piously and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness, in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dvaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamodvaram yoshitam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So, this is the summary, and I'll stop at this point. We did quite well, actually. We covered it in 2 hours and a lot of discussion and question and answers. So now I will open it up to further questions and discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I ask?
Yes, please.
When you're serving the devotees, would you a little bit elaborate on that? Because my limited understanding is sometimes that serving devotee is a devotee, but of course the sadhus and the guru vargas, there's a little difference, right? Like, I'm not trying to judge, or if you can elaborate a little bit on it, and if they are here and if they are not around us, then what is exactly the definition of serving the devotees?
Yes. There are many definitions and many ways one can think of this. One way that we can think of it is that serving the devotees means not just doing the services that we enjoy doing for Krishna. It may be anything.
Oh, Koti-ji.
But also, one second here. But also doing services that the devotees want us to do for Krishna. So serving the devotee just doesn't mean serving them physically, offering them water or doing their laundry. That is one very important way to serve, and we must serve them like that also. But for most of us, like you are saying, who are far away, serving the devotee means doing what they want us to do, even if it's a little uncomfortable, even if it requires a little bit of work. So most of us, we want to do services that we like to do. I like to distribute books, so I will do that service for Krishna. I don't like to do some other service, so I won't do that for Krishna. Or I like to sing for Krishna. I like to do kirtan for Krishna, and I don't like to do other things for Krishna, like distribute books, and so therefore I'll just sing. Well, that is, if the devotees want us to do something, then we should also try to do that to the best of our ability. So that is, by serving the devotee, we are serving their vapu and their vani, serving them physically, giving them a donation, helping them, because they don't, sometimes they're full-time devotees who are serving, like sannyasis, like mendicants. And serving them also means serving their instruction or their desire. So yes, in both ways.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Nice question. I think Kalavati Mataji, you were next. I cannot hear you. Still muted. No, I cannot hear you. I'll come back to you. So we'll just come back to you maybe in the meantime. And then let's see. I'll just go down the list here. Ambika Mataji, you're next.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So, sorry, just a minute. Sorry about that. So the question I have is that we said, after those four types of people who come to Krishna, and the Gnanis are the most dear to Krishna. And the Gnanis, especially, when we read the purport of 728, Prabhupada, elaborated on that, whoever is following, they have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of the religion. They are the actually one who was considered higher. So I was listening to in a class yesterday that, and I think you must have heard about this story. There was a woman during Prabhupada's time at Radha Damodar temple, when Prabhupada was in Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, and there was a woman, simple Rajavasi lady, who was bringing a water. So her service, she just brought a water from Yamuna and she brought it to the temple. She just left it in the courtyard. Nobody knew who that woman was. She just came. Every day she just brought a water, and the pujaris, they use that water to bathe the deities. So she did such a selfless service, and Prabhupada actually, sort of highlighted her devotional service in so many of lectures, or like some of the ways where it's written. So then how do we understand, I mean, should we understand that this woman, this lady might have done all this process, like going through the real understanding of who is Krishna, who is the absolute truth, maybe in her previous life, and in this life she might have just was really just engaged in loving devotional service with Krishna. So is that how we should understand it?
Yes, just like Meera Devi, the famous Meera, she was born in a king's family, but her devotion to Krishna just sprung from her heart. And that's due to punya karma, which is exactly what Krishna is telling us in this chapter, due to past pious activities, due to their past devotional service. Yes.
Right. So we should not ever differentiate and consider that, okay, maybe one is less if someone is not following four regulative principle and, like not listening to the scriptures. Maybe they're in this life, they are not doing all this external devotional service, but internally they are already pure and they are just engaged in the loving devotional service of Krishna.
Yeah, or it will develop more. It will develop more. So they're starting with that bhakti. They have the natural attraction to bhakti, but then Krishna will put them in touch with the devotees, so they'll get that training. So they will come to the same level, but where their bhakti is at, that is So someone may be a great devotee, but born in a meat eater family. And so they might be eating meat, but they have that intense attraction to Krishna. And so they'll come in contact with devotees, and then gradually they will make advancement in this life or a future life.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice question. Pushpanjali Mataji?
Hey, Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have a question about service. So the question is the service that we do at home, like worshipping the deities, making prasadam, taking care of the family, as seeing them as, our service to Krishna. So that service is not enough. I mean, apart from that, we have to take service at the temple. Like the proportion, I don't understand, because the lifestyle that we have in Krishna consciousness, sometimes we don't know, seeing this also as service to Krishna, but sometimes that's not enough, right? So how much more service to take at the temple, and what is for the grahastha, what is the rule?
Yes, that's a very nice question, and that depends a lot on our situation. It depends a lot on who we are and what our role is. Like, for example, a mother with small children, their service in terms of proportion, like you were saying, may be completely to take care of the children and the family. Because such mothers who have small children, they actually struggle to chant their 16 rounds, to even find time just to finish their chanting. And there's examples in Prabhupada's life where Prabhupada told one mother like this, that your children are your deities. The mother wanted to do deity worship, and he said, don't worry, right now your children are your deities. So the example is there in Prabhupada's life, and the example is also there in contemporary times when different gurus present in our movement have said the same thing. So so that is up to Krishna. Now and up to Krishna through the devotee of the Lord. Now, even for someone who does not have children, now let's say if both husband and wife are working, and in this case there's one family, they were living in Seattle, and both husband and wife were working, and they had very high-paying jobs, and very well-to-do, wealthy, and with that income, they were instrumental in building the temple, in the Seattle temple. That they were giving a lot of donation to the temple. And the mother had small children. And she thought, as a devotee, I should stay home and take care of the children, raise them in Krishna consciousness, and that should be my service. They were not very small, they're school age. And she felt I should not send them to school. But in their case, because they're doing such instrumental service, and that temple, now thousands of people are coming every day to that temple, their spiritual master actually told them, no, you keep working and let the children go to school. And later on, you can, pull them out of school and teach them at home and make them more devotees. But right now, this service is more important. So that balance really comes through the direction of the guru and the devotee. And so we all should have a guide in our spiritual life who is seeing what we're doing, who is present there, who's not too far away. It can be in our local yatra or someone, and we can get a sense from them. But a lot of it has to do with our own self. Also, we have to think, what is bringing me closer to Krishna? So Krishna is, like he's saying in this chapter we've been discussing, from within the heart, he's giving guidance. So Krishna will give us indications. We also have our own limitations, right? So we do to the best of our ability. So the main test is what is pleasing Guru and Krishna and taking me closer to Krishna. That should be the balance. So if our work and our home activities are pleasing Guru and Krishna the most, we should continue that. But on the other hand, this Guru says, okay, now your children are older and it's time to go in the front lines and preach and distribute books, spend more time doing that, then we should do that. And then once we're 50 and we're Vanaprastha, then that may really become our full-time engagement. So this is different for different people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gopal Govinda Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu. I have a question which might be a little bit awkward also here. Sorry about it. Um, we hear some question that Krishna is giving this message in his own explanation, and I just wrote down. So when he says that I am the taste of water, and so he's explaining about himself. So we never have any other literature or scripture where the person is telling about himself as a god, right? So how do we explain this to when other people in the preaching, when they contradict the situation that on one side we are saying person who's God, he will never say that he is God. But here we have the real God, and he's by mercy giving the details of how to understand him. But there's a contradiction in explaining.
No, I think they're mixing up two things. What we say is that the person who's a devotee, a real devotee, will never say that they're a devotee. They will always feel that I'm not qualified enough. But Prabhupada says actually that the exact opposite, the person who is God will say that they're God. Krishna declares it, and therefore we know because he's saying it, but he's also proving it. If we just say that we're God and then we don't prove it, then that's an empty hoax. So, because Lord Chaitanya did not want to really prove it, he came in the mood of a devotee, therefore he also didn't say it. And when he did say it, or the Shastras said, he also did show to some close associates the universal form. He also proved it. So Prabhupada says there's nothing wrong in anyone saying that they're God. But along with that, they need to lift a mountain with their left hand and the pinky finger. And if they do that, then they say God as much as they want to. So God will declare that he's God. He has no shyness.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. You had a follow-up point on that?
No, I was just thinking about the Kapil Muni's instructions when he's speaking. He never said that he was the incarnation of God too. So none of the incarnations, this tense is used. First tense is not used anywhere. In my memory, I might be wrong.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, maybe that's why Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. He therefore really says it very clearly. And even Lord Ramachandra, in his Leela, we don't find him that often saying that he's God. In fact, he'll be worshipping Shiva and like kind of acting like a human being almost. But he shows it by his example, and all the devotees around him tell him that he's God. And then, oh, nice comment in the chat. Hanuman lifts a mountain, but he's only a bhakta. So even lifting a mountain may not be enough. So all the things, they say it. Krishna shows the universal form. The other sages confirm it. The other devotees confirm it. And our own heart confirms it. And Krishna is present in our heart. So yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna. Kalavati Mataji, we can try again.
Very well, Prabhu. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, perfect. I wanted some clarification on verse 7.3, where Krishna is saying about the perfect. So even the perfect hardly knows him. I wanted to get a better definition of the word perfect, because to me, once someone's fully Krishna conscious, they are perfect. So, but that's not what this verse is implying. So I just wanted to understand.
Which is the verse again? The verse number?
7.3.
7.3. Oh, yes. Okay. So 7.3. Let's go back there. So your question is, what is the meaning of the word perfection here?
Yes, because Krishna is saying that even one who is perfect hardly knows him. But to me, when one is fully Krishna conscious, unless I've misunderstood.
One out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. I see. Okay, yeah, no, I now follow what you're saying. Is if you read it like this, and of those who have achieved perfection, among those hardly one knows me in truth.
Yeah, yes, that's my confusion there. Because someone who's perfect to me would be 100% Krishna conscious. So they would already know Krishna fully.
Yeah, I mean, if perfect means a devotee, then that person knows Krishna tatvata in truth. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service, one cannot know Krishna. So, let's see what word Krishna uses for perfection. Siddhanam. Siddhanam, the siddha is siddhaye, those who are siddhas. Yeah, it's a very good question. My own understanding would be that Krishna here is using the word perfection in a different sense. Perfection in the sense of a transcendentalist. And Prabhupada is actually alluding to this in the purport. He says, other transcendentalists in the first paragraph may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. So perhaps he's saying that thousands endeavor for perfection. That is, obviously, thousands of people are interested in religion, and of them, one of them becomes Brahman realized, that is, God realized, and more in terms of impersonal Brahman, that there is a God, and like Socrates, he was Brahman realized, Prabhupada said, but he didn't know Krishna as Shama Sundar, as Govinda, and that is only known by the bhakta. So the bhakta is more than perfect. Perfect means spiritual, right? Spiritual, you're perfect. You're fully spiritualized above the modes of nature. But he's more than perfect. He's actually a lover of God. So yeah. So we have to, half of the time, it's not the Sanskrit words, it's actually the English words that have multiple meanings that Prabhupada uses. And in this case, he's using perfect in the sense of Brahman realized, not Krishna.
Thank you so much. That's very clear now.
Thank you for the observation. Very perceptive. Nice point. Swati Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. So, Prabhuji, I had a question on chapter 5, the last verse, Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasam. And in the study guide, it was said that for Surudam Sarvabhutanam, it said that a Krishna conscious person does not divide enemies from friends because he knows that Krishna is the friend of all living beings. So I was confused and just wanted to check does this mean that he treats enemies and friends the same? Because during the class you had mentioned that if some people don't like us, it is okay. We don't have to be friendly with everyone. So even if they don't like us, I mean, are we still treating them the same, or how do we interpret this here? Thank you.
So the devotee is friendly to everyone, but the devotee is not disturbed if someone is not friendly to them, because he understands that Krishna is a friend of all living entities, and therefore I am not, and therefore, unfortunately, I cannot be the friend of everyone, and that is okay because my role is one of being the servant. So like there's people like the hugging mother in India who tries to hug millions of people, and then after that she got arthritis in her arms and she had to stop. So she's trying to take the role of God. So now in terms of friends and enemies, the devotee will be friendly to everyone, and that means relating with them differently. So the devotee has no enemy. Like Maharaj Yudhishthira had no animosity towards anyone. But then he related with, having no enemy means relating with people differently. So with the tiger, we will be a friend to the tiger by respecting its power and staying away. to the demon, the devotee may be friendly to that living entity by fighting with him, like Maharaj Yudhishthira did, under the instruction of Krishna, and killing the demon in rare circumstances. So friendly means to do what is beneficial for the other, to have the good in mind for the other, and to wish the best for the other. So Narad Muni cursed Nal and Kuvera to become trees. And by cursing them, he was showing the greatest friendship, because he says this is for their benefit, because one day they will see Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Kishore Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhuji, we talked about rendering devotional service will make a spiritual advancement, right?
Yes.
Like spiritual advancement means following the principles and rendering more service to rendering more service, or how do we define like spiritual advancement, and how do we how do we measure?
How do we measure our spiritual advancement? Is that?
And what is spiritual advancement like?
Yes. Prabhupada, one place says that we can measure our spiritual advancement by the degree that our attraction for material things is reducing. So we will only be able to reduce our material desires if we are actually genuinely feeling some spiritual happiness and spiritual pleasure in spiritual activities. So someone else's spiritual advancement, we cannot judge their spiritual advancement, because we don't know what's going inside their heart. And when they're crying, whether it's out of ecstasy, or is it out of distress, or is it just a show? So Prabhupada says we can only measure our own spiritual life and someone else's spiritual life by the practical reality of, are they interested in material life? And how much are they interested? And so we can assess our spiritual advancement by the degree that we are more interested in loving and serving Krishna and in spiritual activities, and the degree that our interest in material things is going less. And we will actually see that happening. It's a fact. Like a person's, after you start seeing, like, what's the point in getting so involved materially and in all the material things? When we start to realize that the nature of the world, it's so disappointing and so temporary. So this is just the tangible result.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. And that result comes as a result of the association of devotees. We start to develop spiritual taste. So very important, yes. Narayana Prasad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to know who divided the 700 slokas of Bhagavad Gita into different chapters and when?
That's a very good question. That's a very nice question. I was also thinking of the same thing. I was thinking, how and when did it come in this form? And I don't know the answer. If someone on this call
They have
knows
given the
answer,
different names also, no? The
yes.
names also given, correctly they have given, but I just wanted to, a curiosity, at what level it has happened after Lord Krishna, 5,000 years back. So,
yes. See, I don't know if Vyasa
anywhere.
did this or if it was someone else. I really don't know. Is someone else on the call have an idea? Okay, so we will ask that question, and we will see
Find
if
out the answer.
Krishna will reveal it to us.
We'll search for the answer actually.
Yes.
I searched a number of books now, I could not find anywhere actually.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Nice question. Kruti Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. I had a question from chapter 5. You said the impersonal liberation is sort of a slumber for the souls. But even at the time of annihilation, when Mahavishnu breathes in, the remaining souls, who still have the material desires, they also seem to sleep in Mahavishnu's body for some time until there's the next cycle of the material universe for them to come back and excise their desires. But during this period, is it like the impersonal liberation? Are these two states similar for the soul, or if they're different, how are they different?
That's a nice question. I think they're similar. In other words, they are actually similar, uh, but there's a difference depending upon where the soul is at. So some of us at the time of destruction are staying in a dormant state. So we're really not. It's like the state of deep sleep. We're not conscious of anything. We're just in a state of, it's just dormant. The soul is dormant, waiting to enter into a body. But in the state of Brahman realization, we're in a state of where we're just in a bright light, very bright and full of, just happiness, but no relationship, no pleasure, no reciprocation, and no suffering either. But we are aware of our existence. Like when you're sitting in a room with a bright light, you're aware of your existence. But when you're sleeping, you're not aware exactly of your existence. You are alive, but you're not aware. So you're in a dormant state. So at that point, when the souls enter into the body of Mahavishnu, they're entering into a dormant state. And when you get impersonal liberation, you're still not feeling the pleasure that we're searching for. Therefore, we cannot sustain that place. But it is still a state of awareness. We're still aware of our existence.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice point. Nice question. Reena Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I just ask one question, like, are you, like, bhakti is supposed to be given, or maybe at least it happens because of the devotees, right? It is not your property. So when people claim like I'm the biggest bhakta or something like that, the biggest devotee, it's not your property. It's like a mother. It cannot be yours. So can you
Yes.
elaborate on
Yes.
that?
So bhakti can only be given by the bhakta. Only one who has devotion can give another person devotion. Therefore, we need the shelter of the devotee, because even Krishna cannot give it to us, because Krishna is the object of bhakti, right? Krishna himself does not have bhakti for himself. Of course, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he does have bhakti for himself because he's in the role of a devotee. But Krishna as Krishna, they cannot give bhakti because he cannot give something he does not have. He has bhakti for his devotee, but if we want Krishna bhakti, only the devotee has that bhakti. So bhakti is something that can only be given by the devotee. And we are servants of bhakti, like you're saying. Bhakti Devi is this devotee of Krishna, servant of Krishna. So we are trying to engage in bhakti. Bhakti is not under our control. We only get bhakti by the grace of the Lord, by the mercy of the devotee and the Lord, by their causeless mercy, like Prabhupada says, by their spontaneous mercy, we get Krishna bhakti. So while our effort may encourage them to give us the bhakti, we cannot earn bhakti. At the same time, unless we put in the effort, Krishna won't give us the bhakti because he's very careful in giving it. He wants to be very careful that this person is very serious, very sincere before he or his devotee give us bhakti, or through a devotee before he gives us the bhakti. Because once you are a bhakta, you own the Lord. I was just listening to a class, and in that class it was being said that how the devotee does not become as powerful as the Lord, but in fact, the devotee becomes more powerful than the Lord in one way. Not exactly, but in one way. Why? Because the Lord becomes controlled by the devotee. And so therefore, Krishna will give it only when we put in the effort. So we should really work hard for bhakti, and but still knowing that it's only Krishna's causeless mercy that gives it to us.
You're right, but sometimes I am the biggest devotee. That sense makes you become bhogi. You are not a yogi anymore. You're not connecting with God anymore, and you are only doing the procedures, and then you end up in a very miserable mental state.
Yes, but that is not bhakti. You see, if someone says that I'm the greatest devotee, then how is that bhakti? Bhakti means being the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. That is the definition of bhakti. So if someone says, I am the greatest servant, then they're the greatest servant, but they're not a bhakta. Bhakta means servant of the servant of the servant 1,000 times removed. So if we feel that we are the servant of our guru, then we're not the servant of our guru. Because servant of the guru means being the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the guru. Servant of Krishna means being the servant of the servant of the servant. So we should not think that I am the next one down. So there's Krishna, there's Guru, and there's me. That is not bhakti. Thank you. Nice point. Very nice question. Anyone else that we have not? Okay.
Prabhuji, I wanted to add something regarding seva part. I read this long back, and I'm trying to. I'm not there, but I'm just trying to think about it over and over, so that one day, hopefully. So it said that that person was saying, when I close my eyes, I see Krishna, and when I open my eyes, I see seva. So that person is like totally understood that it is Krishna everywhere. And when it is Krishna everywhere, then being a part of Krishna, I'm a servant at every moment. So that was something that Mataji asked about, for a grahastha, what should be the, every part is a seva if inside we are connected to Krishna. So be it a devotee, be it a non-devotee, be it a guru or a small devotee, a beginner, or anybody, a street sweeper maybe. But if there's a connection within with Krishna at every moment, then there will be service at every moment. There cannot be service cannot be left aside when there is connection with Krishna. When there is a connection, I mean, it is seva has to be there. It is simultaneously happening for a devotee. So I just wanted to share. I mean, I liked it. I don't know how whether I get
No,
the
this is
point
a
through.
very nice point. Very wonderful, wonderful point, that we should not see our family life as not service, and Krishna consciousness, serving the temple as service. No, everything is for Krishna. Devotee does everything for Krishna. So his family life is service. Service in the temple is service. All of these things are service if they're done for Krishna. At the same time, just to kind of temper that or qualify that service, even in our family life, needs to be done under the guidance of the spiritual master, because we could be tricking ourselves in serving ourselves or our children or our family and thinking that it is service for Krishna, when in fact it's service for our false ego. And His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj gives a very nice example in this regard. To just illustrate this point, he describes how there's one family in New Vrindavan who are living in New Vrindavan. And when you enter their home, it was picture perfect. Like every glass was in its perfect place, and every picture of Krishna was like in every wall of every room. And there was, this, Krishna conscious sound system, and it was just, Krishna perfect. And all the time they were working on cleaning their house and making their house very nice and making the devotional atmosphere in the house. And one day, their house burned down to the ground. And His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj gives that as an example, that Krishna was telling them that, okay, this really isn't service. You're getting a bit too involved in the house and not forgetting that you also have service to do in the temple, and you have service to serve the other devotees. So both points are completely true. Our family life is a service to Krishna, because our children, we're raising them for Krishna. At the same time, we always need guidance because we could get carried away. It's possible to get carried away and become too passionate about certain things.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. I mean, with this, I mean, I was meaning, it's not only family. When I talk to my friends, I read between the lines that they are saying. Sometimes they don't say it, they need something, and the seva can be just extending to, what their needs are, because it is sometimes we are not mindful about things, but when we connect to Krishna, that awareness is there, what not only what our family needs, but people around us, especially in this time of COVID. People are so depressed, sometimes they just don't want to cook. So I'm cooking, for 4 or 5 people. I cook for 2 or 4 people more. So it is just being a little more conscious about, this what people need also around us. Of course, temple is there. So
Yes.
even in regards to, because I was thinking in terms of, those devotees who have surrendered their life, and they usually get donations only over summer when they travel. But make it a point that, it is because this year it is like they don't travel, and then the needs are still the same,
Mm.
because they have to have the 2 meals and all, but donations don't keep flowing to them, and they're
Yes.
totally dedicated people. But I mean, I need to make it a point that, we try to,
Yes.
make it a conscious attempt that, we want to give it. Last year, I mean, in summer we could not do it, but now winter time we have to pass it on, because we have got so much from them. So we have to be just aware of, they have a human part of their needs.
Right. Yes.
So
Very nice point, Mataji. This is so, devotees have to be human beings. And sometimes being a better devotee means being a better human being. And reaching out to people through our family activities, like you're saying, cooking, the personal touch. In fact, what makes people most devotees is the personal touch, when they have a personal touch with a devotee. So thank you. It is very valuable. This point is very, very valuable. We have to like every grahastha, when they cook, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says they should go out and call out 10 times, is there someone hungry? And they should feed someone if they're hungry before they eat. So this is a principle of of devotional life, sharing and caring. So yes, thank you. Dhananjay Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, and this is Jai Draupadi and Devi and Dandvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, one Prabhuji was asking about the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, who wrote it.
Yes, chapters.
Right, chapters. I remember last year we were reading the book Life of Madhvacharya ji. So it's my I'm maybe I'm wrong. Like we read Madhvacharya ji went to show her his Gita Bhashya to Srila Vyasdev ji.
Okay, yes.
So is that Srila Vyasdev ji who wrote all this?
Yes, of course. See, the Gita is a chapter from the Mahabharata. The Gita is just one chapter in the Mahabharata. Most important chapter, but it's a chapter in the Mahabharata. And Vyasadeva wrote the Mahabharata. So it's quite likely that Vyasadeva made these chapter titles, but it was the Gita was written down by Vyasadeva, spoken by Krishna, but written down and received to us by Vyasadeva. And when Madhvacharya meets Vyasadeva, he is showing his bhashya, meaning his commentary on the Gita that we have through Vyasadeva.
Okay, so it means all that verses which was spoken by Lord Krishna, Vyasdev ji wrote it and
Yes.
divided in all this.
Yes, and Vyasadeva is none other than Krishna. So Krishna
Right.
came to write all the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavad Gita. And so, see, the part that we are unsure about is, did Vyasadeva actually write the chapter titles? Or he wrote the Gita, all 700 verses, or were the chapters made after Vyasadeva? And that I don't know the answer to. That I'm going to find out. It's a very interesting question. I want to know the answer. So I'm going to try to see if maybe like Mother Urmila or some other devotees who are very in tune with the Gita may know this.
So as you said, maybe like when Mahabharat was written by Vyas Dev Ji. So at that time he wrote all this.
Yes, definitely. That's the time when you wrote it.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful, enlightening discussion. Chapter 7. This is one of the shortest chapters, only 30 verses. And it's such a blissful chapter. And it was so blissful to have your association today, all of you. Thank you. Please have a wonderful week. And I'll send the homework out as soon as possible. And we'll meet next week, same time, chapter 8.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna
Dandat
Prabhuji.
pranam.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Pranam.